Hello everybody, welcome to the Neil's Homestead. I'm Jeanette. This spring I've been really hungry for rhubarb, and I like to make a sauce out of the rhubarb. And I did buy some, ouch, the cat just scratched me. I did buy some roots to grow my own rhubarb, but then it started raining and I haven't gotten them out in the ground. They're sitting in my refrigerator, hopefully staying good. But yesterday I was in a place and I asked about rhubarb. They didn't have any, but somebody else suggested that I check an Amish lady who said that she had more rhubarb than she knew what she was going to do with, but she didn't want to bother with taking it to the produce auction or anything like that. And so I went to her house and I made a deal. I got 15 pounds of rhubarb for the price of taking her and perhaps one of her friends over to Versailles, which is about an hour away, and visit some stores. So I think I got the good deal. She thinks she got the good deal, so we're both happy. Now I'm going to get this rhubarb cooked up, put into jars, and process it by water bathing it so we can have rhubarb several times over this coming year. Thanks for coming around. This is what 15 pounds of rhubarb looks like. I'm going to get it washed up and get the process started. The variety of this rhubarb is Victoria, and as you can see, it's not all that red. There's a few red, but mostly they're green stalks. I think that the red rhubarb probably has a little more sugar content in it. This Victoria you can grow by seeds very easily. I've done it quite a bit, but I've always sold all the plants instead of planting any myself. There's a nice red one. So my rhubarb is not going to be very red, just a slight tint of red, but it will still taste good. I know it will. After I've washed and dried it, I intend to cut it into about 1/2 inch to 1 inch size pieces, and I'll discard anything that doesn't look very good. Rhubarb is a perennial plant. It grows on a stalk, as you see, and has a huge leaf at the end of it. The leaf is poisonous, so you'd never want to eat that. You break the stalk off just below the ground, or cut it off just above the ground in the spring. The flavor of rhubarb is tart and tangy. It's commonly mixed with strawberries, but I've actually never done that. And people often make jams or jellies out of it. I don't make much jams or jellies because I like to eat as simply as possible. Old Guy does like jams and jellies. It's easier for me to just go to my local jam and jelly place that makes it, and it's an Amish place also, and buy him that, because to me jams and jellies are a lot of trouble for not that much good. I'd rather just eat as plain and simply as possible. After I get it chopped, I'm going to put it into a 2-gallon pan that I have here. I do own a big 3-gallon pot that's stainless steel, but it's fairly lightweight and doesn't have that thick bottom on it like this pan does. And I'm afraid that it might scorch, and it gets hotter on the bottom of those thin pans than it does one with thick bottom. I've looked on the internet, and I've looked at several different books that I have. The recipes on the internet suggest adding a little bit of water to your rhubarb when you cook it. These two books actually tell you to put sugar on your rhubarb and just let it set for 4 hours. The act of the sugar mixed with the fruit causes the juices to kind of come out of the fruit and give you enough cooking liquid to do it. But I'm going to add a little bit of water. For every pound of rhubarb I have, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of water and 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm going to go ahead and dissolve that first because I've got my pans really full of the rhubarb. I don't want to have to try to stir in sugar and water without it scorching, and so I'm going to make a syrup first and then pour the amount over the top of the rhubarb. This pan has 8.5 pounds of rhubarb in it, so I've put 2 1/4 cups of water in here, and then I'll add 4.5 cups of sugar. I'm going to heat that up and stir it the whole time till it gets dissolved because that's a really heavy syrup and I could burn it if I'm not careful. My syrup's come to a boil, pretty hard boil, real fast. Leaving the burner on, I'm just going to pour this over the top of that. Now my pan is really full, so what I've got to do is let my rhubarb cook slowly, and it'll cook down, but at this point if I had to stir it, it would be pretty hard to stir. So just going to let that juicy syrup sit down at the bottom and start simmering, and then as it cooks I'll stir it around. But you don't want to hurry this along. You need to let it cook slowly and gently because it might scorch, and you don't want to let it cook too fast and be impatient and end up ruining everything you've accomplished. While my sauce is cooking down, I'm going to get my jars ready. For the most part I'm using non-mason jars, just plain clear glass jars, because I don't have to pressure can this. I'm going to cook it in a water bath so the jars won't be under pressure. I don't know exactly how many I'm going to need, but I'm going to line up several so I can be ready for whatever happens. Since I don't have to pressure can this, I can use my lighter weight water bath pan. It doesn't weigh so much on my stove because the water gets pretty heavy on that. I have a glass top stove and I do can on it. It's not recommended necessarily, but I've had pretty good luck with doing it. Before long it started bubbling down in the bottom, so I stirred it and it's already breaking down. I don't think it's going to take too long, but I still need to be careful that I don't do this too fast. Keep it rotated so that the uncooked ones can be down where more the heat is. But you can see how it's already cooked down quite a bit. At this point you could taste your sauce and see if it tastes right. See if it needs any more sugar. You can't take any sugar out, of course, but it tastes really good to me, so I'm going to leave it the way it is. If you think it's too tart, you can fold in some sugar and the heat of it will probably dissolve it. Just make sure you stir it very carefully, completely, so that it all dissolves. I've got myself all set up here with my jars, my funnel. I've got a big long-handled ladle, my rings for putting on top of the jars. My lids are in this pan right here of water. And my sauce is here. Now this is going to be a sticky process, so I'm going to want to try to keep things as clean as I can, but I expect that it's going to be a little bit messy. I'm going to fill my jars up within like 1/2 inch because this isn't going to bubble up too much. It's already hot. It's just going to heat up for 15 more minutes in the water bath and be good. So I think I can fill them up pretty close to the top. After you get your jars filled, you need to take a clean, damp cloth, ooh, that's hot, and wipe off the top of each jar. You don't want anything on the rim of that jar that would stop the lid from sealing down on top of it. After you get all the tops cleaned off, then take your lids and place one on top of each jar, and then put a ring on top and tighten it down. You don't have to screw it down real tight, just finger tight. If you do it too tight, it'll be hard to get off afterward. If you do it too loose, then it might not seal properly. Place the jars in to the rack. It's kind of a balancing act because this thing is sitting on the edge. I can put 10 pints in there. After I get them done, I lift this up, bring them into the center, and then slowly lower it. My lids are covered, but not very much, so I'm going to add a little more hot water to that. When it comes to a boil, set your timer for 15 minutes. That's what Ball recommends, and it'll be done then. Time's up, so I'm going to take my jars out with my lifter. I have a towel over here where I can safely put my jars down. When I lay them down, I don't want them to touch. Just a little bit of space in between. Hear all that popping? This variety of rhubarb is obviously not as red as most rhubarb is, especially if you buy some in a commercial way. But I know that it tastes just as good as any rhubarb I've ever eaten because I already ate some. So thanks for coming around while I make my rhubarb, and I'll see you next time.